Three identical faces in impeccable suits stared at the flight attendant who just refused their meal. "I'm sorry, these meals are for first-class passengers only," she insisted smugly. Little did she know, Malcolm, Marcus, and Malik Washington weren't just triplets, they owned the entire airline she worked for. Before we dive into this incredible story, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. This tale of justice and transformation is one you won't want to miss, so hit that like button and subscribe to catch more unbelievable true stories of triumph over discrimination. The Washington triplets weren't always airline owners. Malcolm, Marcus, and Malik grew up in South Chicago, raised by hardworking parents who instilled in them unwavering values of dignity, excellence, and perseverance. Their father worked double shifts at a factory while their mother taught at a local elementary school. Money was tight, but determination was abundant in their modest three-bedroom home. By age 12, the brothers had already started their first business, building basic websites for local shops. Their identical appearances often confused clients, but their distinct personalities complemented each other perfectly. Malcolm possessed natural leadership qualities and strategic vision. Marcus excelled in communication and relationship building. Malik brought technical brilliance and innovation to their partnership. Through scholarships and part-time jobs, they put themselves through college, graduating from MIT with computer science degrees. While classmates headed to established tech giants, the triplets pooled their resources to launch Washington Innovations, developing revolutionary supply chain management software that quickly caught attention. Success didn't come easily. Venture capitalists frequently dismissed them, investors questioned their credibility, and competitors spread rumors about their qualifications. The brothers persevered, bootstrapping their company until it couldn't be ignored. Their breakthrough came when a major retailer implemented their software, resulting in 40% logistics savings. Within 10 years, Washington Innovations transformed into a multi-billion-dollar tech empire specializing in efficiency solutions across various industries. Their latest acquisition, Legacy Airlines, a struggling carrier with a storied history but failing finances, represented their ambitious expansion into transportation. The brothers rebranded it Washington Air, investing millions in fleet upgrades and customer experience improvements. However, reports of poor service and discriminatory treatment toward minority passengers troubled them. Rather than rely solely on consulting reports, they decided to experience their airline firsthand. The only way to truly understand customer experience is to become the customer, Malcolm had suggested during their strategy meeting. This undercover approach wasn't new for them. They'd employed similar tactics when acquiring hotel chains, manufacturing facilities, and retail networks. Their shared belief was simple: leadership requires first-hand knowledge of both customer and employee experiences. For this inspection flight from Chicago to San Francisco, they deliberately dressed in business casual attire rather than their usual designer suits. No flashy watches or accessories that might identify them as executives. Their plan was to observe naturally without staff performing differently under scrutiny. The problems began immediately at check-in. Despite holding first-class tickets, the agent double-checked their documentation multiple times. "Are you sure you're in first class?" she questioned, glancing skeptically at their confirmation. White passengers ahead and behind moved through the process with courteous efficiency, receiving smiles and travel tips. The triplets exchanged knowing glances but remained professionally composed. Boarding proved equally problematic. Flight attendant Heather Barrett questioned their zone despite clear markings on their boarding passes. "This is for first-class boarding only," she stated loudly, causing nearby passengers to stare. "Yes, we're aware," Marcus replied calmly, presenting their passes again. "We have first-class tickets." With obvious reluctance, she allowed them to board. The brothers settled into their spacious seats, observing as white first-class passengers received immediate drink offerings and warm welcomes. The attendants seemed to deliberately avoid eye contact with them. "Just like the Garrison Hotel situation," Marcus muttered, referencing a luxury establishment they'd later acquired after experiencing similar discrimination there. "Document everything," Malcolm reminded his brothers quietly as they pulled out their tablets. This isn't about us today. It's about every customer who looks like us but doesn't have the resources to fight back. The brothers weren't strangers to such treatment. Throughout their entrepreneurial journey, they'd encountered countless instances of bias. Security guards following them in their own office buildings. Executives assuming they were support staff during important meetings. Being mistaken for valets when arriving at business functions in their own vehicles. Each incident had strengthened their resolve to create change from positions of power. Today was no different. This flight would provide critical insights into their newly acquired airline's culture, though they hadn't anticipated becoming the direct targets of discrimination. As the final boarding announcements finished and the plane prepared for departure, the triplets settled in for what would become one of the most consequential flights in commercial aviation history. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner pushed back from the gate at O'Hare International Airport right on schedule. Captain Thomas Schneider's voice crackled through the speakers, welcoming passengers aboard Washington Air's non-stop service to San Francisco. The safety demonstration played on overhead screens as the triplets observed crew interactions with meticulous attention to detail. 20 minutes after takeoff, drink service began in the first-class cabin. Flight attendant Heather Barrett moved efficiently down the aisle, offering champagne, wine, and premium spirits to passengers with practiced charm. Her smile remained firmly fixed until she reached the triplets' row, where it noticeably faltered. "Still water," she stated rather than asked, placing 3 cups down without making eye contact. "Actually," Malik corrected politely, "I prefer sparkling water with lime if available." "We're running low on sparkling," Heather replied, despite having just served it to the passengers across the aisle. "That's fine. Regular water is acceptable," Malik responded, exchanging glances with his brothers. Malcolm discreetly tapped notes into his tablet about the interaction while Marcus observed other attendant service patterns. The contrast was striking. White passengers received multiple check-ins, enthusiastic menu descriptions, and attentive care. The triplets sat unattended, their call buttons ignored for nearly 15 minutes when they requested pillows. "Perhaps we're being oversensitive," Marcus suggested, always the most diplomatic of the three. 3 Harvard Business Review case studies on service discrimination suggest otherwise, Malcolm replied. "This is textbook differential treatment." Malik nodded in agreement. "Let's see how meal service unfolds before drawing conclusions." They didn't wait long for confirmation. As the scent of warm bread and seared salmon filled the cabin, Heather and another attendant named Kenneth Reynolds distributed linen tablecloths and premium dishware throughout first class, skipping the triplets' row entirely. "Excuse me," Malcolm addressed Heather as she passed. "I believe you missed our row for meal setup." Heather glanced at their seats, then responded with thinly disguised condescension. "Oh, I thought you gentlemen might be waiting for the coach meal service." "Why would we be waiting for coach meals when we're seated in first class?" Marcus questioned, his usual diplomatic tone hardening slightly. "I'll need to see your boarding passes again," Kenneth interjected, approaching from the galley. Malcolm produced all 3 passes without comment, maintaining steady eye contact with the purser. Kenneth examined them with exaggerated scrutiny. "These appear to be in order, though there must have been some miscommunication during passenger briefing." "There's no miscommunication," Malik stated firmly. "We're first-class passengers expecting first-class service." Kenneth's jaw tightened visibly. "Of course. We'll get you situated right away." Despite this acknowledgement, another 10 minutes passed before their tables were reluctantly prepared, well after other passengers had already received appetizers. Throughout the delay, Malcolm documented every interaction on his tablet. When the meal carts finally rolled through the cabin, passengers received beautifully plated salmon or beef tenderloin on fine china. Heather described wine pairings to white passengers with sommelier-like detail. When she reached the triplets, her demeanor changed dramatically. "Chicken or pasta?" she asked curtly, as if reciting economy options. "I believe first class is serving salmon or beef tenderloin today," Marcus corrected, pointing to neighboring passengers' plates. Heather's response stunned even the well-composed triplets. "I'm sorry, These meals are for first-class passengers only, she insisted, loud enough for nearby travelers to hear. The cabin fell momentarily silent. An elderly white woman across the aisle lowered her fork, clearly uncomfortable with what she just witnessed. Marcus maintained his composure. "We are first-class passengers, as our boarding passes clearly indicate and as your colleague already verified." "There must be some mistake," Heather replied, avoiding eye contact. "We have limited premium meals available." "Yet every other passenger in this cabin has received one," Malcolm pointed out. "Are you suggesting we're somehow different from the other first-class passengers?" The question hung in the air, its implications unmistakable. Several passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others pretended to focus intently on their meals or entertainment screens. Co-pilot Bradley Wilson, who had emerged from the cockpit for his break, approached upon noticing the commotion. Rather than investigating both sides of the situation, he immediately positioned himself alongside Heather and Kenneth. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, directing his question to the crew rather than the triplets. "These gentlemen are unhappy with the meal options," Kenneth explained, deliberately misrepresenting the situation. "We're unhappy with discriminatory service," Malik clarified firmly. "We've been treated differently from every other passenger in this cabin since boarding." Bradley's expression hardened. "Sir, I'd advise you to lower your voice. Disruptive behavior could result in diversionary measures." "Recording factual events isn't disruptive," Malcolm replied, continuing to document the interaction. "Discriminatory service is." The confrontation might have escalated further if not for Jessica Thompson, a younger flight attendant who approached with 3 premium meals on a tray. "I've brought your first-class meals, gentlemen," she announced, professionally arranging their tables. "I apologize for the confusion." Heather turned sharply toward Jessica. "Those were reserved for staff meals," she hissed. "There are plenty of meals remaining," Jessica countered quietly. "And these passengers are entitled to them." The momentary standoff between crew members created palpable tension in the cabin. Bradley motioned for Heather and Kenneth to follow him to the galley, where they engaged in heated whispers. As the triplets finally received their proper meals, Marcus reflected on a similar incident years earlier at the Platinum Club in Boston. There too, they'd been denied service until someone recognized Malcolm from a business magazine cover. The club manager had been fired the following week, after the triplets purchased controlling interest in the establishment. "This feels familiar," he murmured to his brothers. Malcolm nodded. "Unfortunately so. At least the salmon is properly cooked," Malik added with subtle irony, documenting the quality of the meal for his report. None of them could have predicted how significantly this incident would transform not just Washington Air, but the entire airline industry's approach to service and discrimination in the months to come. The atmosphere in first class remained charged with tension as passengers finished their meals. Some travelers shot sympathetic glances toward the triplets while others deliberately avoided eye contact, creating an invisible divide throughout the cabin. Malik finished his salmon, then reached for his wallet, extracting a sleek business card with the Washington Air logo embossed in gold. "I believe it's time," he said quietly to his brothers. Malcolm considered for a moment before nodding. Their original plan had been to maintain their anonymity throughout the flight, but the situation had escalated beyond acceptable boundaries. When Heather returned to collect his plate, Malik handed her the card. "I'd like to speak with the captain when convenient. Please let him know Malik Washington, CEO of Washington Air, would appreciate a moment of his time." Heather glanced at the card, her expression shifting from dismissive to uncertain. "Is this some kind of joke?" "I assure you it's not," Malik replied calmly. "Anyone could print business cards," she responded, though her confident demeanor had noticeably faltered. By now, several nearby passengers had begun surreptitiously recording the interaction on their phones. The triplets' remarkable resemblance to each other had already drawn attention. Now the possibility they might be significant figures added irresistible drama to the unfolding situation. "Perhaps you should verify our identities before making further assumptions," Marcus suggested. "A simple internet search would clarify matters." Kenneth approached, having noticed the extended conversation. "What seems to be the problem now?" he asked, his tone conveying irritation rather than customer service. Heather handed him the business card with a mixture of skepticism and growing concern. "He claims to be Malik Washington." Kenneth examined the card, then scoffed. "And I'm Richard Branson. Return to your seats and stop disrupting the flight." An unexpected voice entered the conversation. Jessica Thompson had been observing from nearby and stepped forward. "Actually, sir, I believe they may be telling the truth." Kenneth turned sharply. "Stay out of this, Thompson. Handle the galley cleanup." "I recognized Mr. Marcus Washington from last month's Forbes cover," Jessica continued despite the warning. The article highlighted their acquisition of Legacy Airlines. A visible tremor passed through Kenneth's previously confident posture. He scrutinized the triplets more carefully, the possibility suddenly seeming less absurd given their identical appearances and professional demeanor. Bradley returned from the cockpit, immediately sensing the shift in atmosphere. "What's happening?" he demanded. "These gentlemen claim to be the Washington triplets," Kenneth explained, his voice lower now. "The new owners." Bradley's expression cycled rapidly through disbelief, analysis, and dawning horror. "That's impossible. The owners would have been on the manifest." "Not if they booked under passenger status to observe service quality," Malcolm pointed out, his calm voice carrying authority without raising volume. A common practice among leadership committed to authentic customer experience assessment. Throughout this exchange, Malcolm continued documenting every word and reaction on his tablet. Marcus had discreetly sent text messages to their executive team, and Malik maintained steady eye contact with the increasingly uncomfortable crew members. As reality sank in, the power dynamic in the aircraft cabin shifted perceptibly. Bradley pulled Kenneth and Heather aside for an urgent whispered conference, while Jessica approached the triplets with fresh beverages. "I sincerely apologize for your experience today," she said softly. "Not all of us operate with such bias." "We understand that," Marcus assured her. "Individual actions don't necessarily reflect an entire organization. That's precisely why we're conducting this assessment personally." The brothers had built their reputation on fair evaluation. Their previous company interventions had rewarded employees who demonstrated excellence regardless of their position, while addressing problematic behavior regardless of seniority. This situation would be handled no differently. Bradley returned alone, his previous authoritarian demeanor replaced with an awkward attempt at reconciliation. "Gentlemen, there seems to have been a misunderstanding. If you are indeed the Washington brothers, we of course extend our sincerest apologies. The issue isn't whether we're the owners," Malik replied evenly. "The issue is that no passengers should experience discriminatory treatment regardless of their identity." "I assure you there was no discrimination intended," Bradley insisted, sweat visibly beading on his forehead. "We've been short-staffed today, which has affected our service timing." "Interesting," Malcolm noted. "Yet every other first-class passenger received prompt, courteous service and appropriate meal options without verification of their tickets. The selective shortage affected only us." Bradley struggled to formulate a response, saved momentarily by turbulence that required his return to the cockpit. The announcement to fasten seatbelts provided temporary reprieve from the confrontation. During this pause, the triplets witnessed the crew's behavior fracturing. Jessica and two other attendants maintained professional service standards while visibly distancing themselves from Heather and Kenneth's approach. Meanwhile, Heather and Kenneth huddled near the galley, frantically whispering while occasionally glancing toward the brothers. Marcus reflected on a pivotal moment during their early business days when a potential investor had attempted to drive wedges between them, offering individual deals that would have fractured their united front. The brothers had responded by walking away collectively and finding alternative funding. Their strength had always been their unity, a lesson that would serve them well in the current situation. As the seatbelt sign dinged off, Malcolm received a text message that brought a subtle smile to his face. He showed the screen to his brothers. "Executive team confirms receipt of documentation." Legal counsel and HR director standing by at SFO for your arrival. Full authority granted per contingency protocol. The message confirmed what they already knew: the infrastructure they'd established for exactly these scenarios was functioning perfectly. The remainder of the flight would continue according to their standard assessment procedure: observe, document, and withhold judgment until all facts were gathered. For now, they would maintain professional composure while watching how the crew chose to handle the remaining hours of the flight, choices that would significantly impact the future careers of everyone involved. The remaining 3 hours of flight time unfolded in a strange atmospheric contradiction, artificially pleasant on the surface yet undeniably tense beneath. Heather now approached the triplets with an overly enthusiastic smile that never reached her eyes, offering frequent beverage refills and snacks with mechanical politeness. Kenneth remained conspicuously absent, presumably strategizing damage control in the galley. Malcolm continued documenting every interaction in meticulous detail while Marcus engaged with Jessica during her breaks, gathering valuable perspective on the airline's internal culture. Malik used the plane's Wi-Fi to discreetly access employee records and customer complaint histories, his tablet screen angled away from passing crew members. "Interesting," Malik murmured to his brothers. "Heather Barrett has 17 customer complaints filed against her in the past year, 12 involving interactions with minority passengers." "Kenneth shows similar patterns," Malcolm added, scrolling through his own findings. "Plus 3 formal HR warnings for creating a hostile work environment according to internal records." "Our friend Bradley isn't much better," Marcus continued. "Documented incidents of ignoring female first officers' input during critical flight decisions." A distinguished gentleman across the aisle had been observing these exchanges with growing interest. Finally, he leaned over with a conspiratorial smile. "Washington Triplets, correct? Edward Blackwell, CEO of Pinnacle Technologies." The brothers nodded politely, recognizing the executive from a recent industry conference. "Spectacular move with the legacy acquisition," Blackwell continued, clearly attempting to network despite the awkward circumstances. "Perhaps we could discuss potential tech integration opportunities for your new fleet." "We're always open to innovation conversations, Mr. Blackwell," Marcus replied diplomatically. "Our office can arrange a proper meeting next week." Blackwell nodded eagerly, apparently oblivious to the irony of his comfortable first-class experience contrasted with the discrimination the triplets had faced in those same seats. This obliviousness itself was telling. Many privileged passengers simply never witnessed the differential treatment occurring mere feet away. Meanwhile, the cabin crew dynamics continued evolving in real time. Jessica had quietly informed several colleagues about the triplets' identities, resulting in visible panic among some staff members while others appeared horrified by their colleagues' behavior. The distinct division among crew members became increasingly apparent: those who had participated in or silently enabled the discrimination versus those who had attempted to provide equal service despite peer pressure. During a bathroom break, Malcolm overheard an illuminating conversation between Heather and Kenneth in the galley. "We can still control this narrative," Kenneth insisted quietly. "We'll document that they were disruptive and demanded special treatment." "But the passenger recordings," Heather began. "Passenger privacy policy prohibits unauthorized recordings," Kenneth countered. "We'll cite company regulations." "What about Jessica and the others who saw everything?" Heather questioned. "Junior staff testimonies rarely outweigh senior crew accounts," Kenneth replied confidently. "Trust me, I've handled similar situations before." Malcolm returned to his seat without revealing he'd overheard their plotting, but activated his phone's recording function for the remainder of the flight. This wasn't the first time someone had attempted to rewrite events to discredit them. During their initial public offering years earlier, a competing CEO had tried similar tactics, claiming the brothers had misrepresented their technology capabilities. That individual's subsequent perjury charges had ended his career. Have you ever witnessed discrimination firsthand like this? Comment number 1 if you've experienced similar treatment while traveling. Or comment number 2 if you've seen others treated unfairly and stood up for them. How would you handle being in the triplets' position? Like this video if you believe they're handling this situation with remarkable composure. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of justice being served in unexpected ways. What do you think will happen when the plane finally lands? Keep watching to find out the shocking resolution that transformed an entire industry. At the flight's halfway point, Jessica approached with premium chocolates and coffee, taking advantage of Heather's absence during her scheduled break. "I feel I should warn you," she said quietly. "Captain Schneider has been informed but is deliberately avoiding involvement. He told Kenneth to handle it discreetly and hasn't left the cockpit since." "Thank you for the information," Marcus replied, accepting the coffee. "Your professionalism hasn't gone unnoticed." Jessica lowered her voice further. "Several of us have experienced similar issues but feared reporting them. Kenneth has connections in upper management, or at least he did before the acquisition. Senior connections should never shield inappropriate behavior," Malik responded. "Our company values reflect that principle." Jessica nodded gratefully before continuing her service duties. The brothers exchanged significant glances, adding this crucial context to their assessment. The situation clearly extended beyond a single incident to suggest systemic cultural issues requiring comprehensive intervention. The flight's remaining hours might have continued in this tense standoff if not for an unexpected medical emergency that dramatically altered the dynamic once again. Approximately 90 minutes before landing, the aircraft encountered moderate turbulence. The captain's voice instructed all passengers to return to their seats and fasten seatbelts. As the plane bounced through rough air pockets, an elderly gentleman in first class clutched his chest, his face contorting with pain. His wife cried out in alarm, "Harold! Harold, what's wrong?" The distress call immediately caught the triplets' attention. Malik, who had completed emergency medical training during their MIT days, unclasped his seatbelt once the turbulence subsided. "Sir, are you experiencing chest pain?" he asked, approaching carefully. Kenneth appeared instantly, positioning himself between Malik and the distressed passenger. "Please return to your seat, sir. We have trained professionals for this." "I am a trained professional," Malik replied calmly. "Emergency medical technician certification with cardiac specialty. Nevertheless, airline protocol requires." The elderly man groaned sharply, slumping forward in his seat. His wife's panicked voice cut through Kenneth's procedural recitation. "Please help him. Someone help my husband. Is there a doctor on board?" Heather announced over the intercom, deliberately ignoring Malik's offered assistance. While they waited for a response, the man's condition visibly deteriorated. His breathing became labored, his skin ashen. Precious seconds ticked by with no medical professionals responding to the call. "This is absurd," Malcolm stated, standing alongside his brother. "Your passenger needs immediate assistance." Jessica pushed forward with the emergency medical kit. "Mr. Washington is certified. Let him help while we wait for another medical professional." With the situation deteriorating and multiple passengers now vocally supporting Malik's intervention, Kenneth reluctantly stepped aside. Malik immediately began a professional assessment, his movements efficient and practiced. "Sir, I'm Malik Washington, EMT certified. I'm going to help you. Can you describe the pain you're feeling?" The passenger, Harold Fitzgerald, as they would later learn, managed to indicate central chest pressure radiating to his left arm. Malik checked vital signs while Marcus engaged the man's frightened wife, gathering critical information about his medical history. 73 years old, previous cardiac stent placement, takes daily aspirin and atorvastatin, Marcus relayed. Malik nodded, recognizing the classic symptoms. "We need to administer aspirin immediately and keep him calm. This appears to be angina, possibly indicating a cardiac event." Jessica efficiently retrieved aspirin from the medical kit while Malik continued monitoring Harold's condition. Malcolm communicated with the flight deck, ensuring they were prepared for potential emergency landing if the situation worsened. For 20 crucial minutes, Malik provided steady care, his calm demeanor and medical knowledge stabilizing the situation. Harold's color gradually improved, his breathing normalized, and the intense pain began to subside, signs that the immediate crisis was being managed effectively. The entire first-class cabin witnessed this response, many passengers filming portions of the intervention. The contrast between the crew's initial resistance and the Triplet's immediate, capable assistance created a powerful narrative that no corporate damage control could later erase. When Harold was finally stable enough to speak, his grateful words carried throughout the quiet cabin. "Thank you, young man. I believe you've saved my life today." His wife, Clara, clasped Malik's hand with tears in her eyes. "We don't know how to thank you. If you hadn't stepped forward when they tried to stop you." The unfinished sentence hung in the air, its implications unmistakable to everyone present. The discriminatory treatment had escalated from poor service to potentially life-threatening obstruction. Captain Schneider finally emerged from the cockpit, assessing the situation with visible relief that a medical emergency hadn't forced an unscheduled landing. "Everything under control here?" he asked Kenneth, still not addressing the Triplets directly. "No, thanks to your crew's initial response," Malcolm stated firmly. "Your first-class passenger nearly suffered serious consequences while your purser was enforcing protocols rather than allowing qualified assistance." The captain seemed to truly notice the Triplets for the first time, his expression shifting as he processed their identical appearances and commanding presence. "You must be he began, recognition dawning. "Washington brothers, yes," Marcus confirmed. "And we'll be addressing numerous concerns about today's flight upon landing." The remainder of the journey proceeded with a transformed cabin atmosphere. Jessica and two other attendants now openly provided attentive service to the Triplets, while Heather, Kenneth, and Bradley maintained uncomfortable distance. The invisible barrier between crew factions had become an unbridgeable chasm. As the plane began its initial descent into San Francisco, Malcolm received confirmation that their executive team was in position for arrival. Harold Fitzgerald was stable, monitored continuously by Malik, with paramedics arranged to meet the aircraft. "Quite a memorable inspection flight," Marcus observed quietly. "Indeed," Malcolm agreed. "Though not in ways anyone anticipated." Malik rejoined them after ensuring Harold was comfortable. His wife mentioned they've been loyal legacy customers for 30 years. She said this is the first time they've ever witnessed such obvious discrimination on board. Discrimination that nearly prevented life-saving intervention, Malcolm noted, adding this critical detail to his report. As the California coastline came into view, the Triplets prepared for landing, not just of the aircraft, but of the consequential organizational changes their experience would catalyze. What had begun as a routine quality assessment had transformed into a pivotal moment for their newly acquired airline. The seatbelt sign illuminated for final approach, and passengers throughout first class exchanged significant glances. Everyone present understood they had witnessed something unprecedented, a dramatic real-time revelation of both institutional bias and courageous leadership that would likely make headlines by morning. For the Washington brothers, the approaching confrontation wasn't about personal vindication but systemic transformation, exactly the kind of meaningful change they had built their business reputation upon delivering. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to San Francisco International Airport. Local time is 2:17 p.m. with clear skies and temperature of 72 degrees. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until the aircraft has come to a complete stop and the captain has turned off the seatbelt sign. The standard arrival announcement carried unusual weight as the plane touched down smoothly on SFO's runway. Passengers gathered belongings and activated phones, many immediately beginning to share their extraordinary in-flight experience through texts and social media posts. The digital ripples of what had transpired were already spreading beyond the aircraft. Captain Schneider's voice came through the speakers once more. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've received instructions to remain at our arrival gate after deplaning. All passengers will disembark as normal, but we ask our flight crew to remain on board for a brief operational meeting." This unprecedented announcement caused visible alarm among certain crew members. Kenneth and Heather exchanged panicked glances while Bradley emerged from the cockpit with a tense expression. Only Jessica and the attendants who had provided proper service maintained professional composure. As the jet bridge connected and the cabin door opened, 5 individuals in immaculate business attire boarded before any passengers could exit. Their Washington Air executive badges identified them immediately: Chief Operating Officer, Human Resources Director, Chief Legal Counsel, Vice President of Customer Experience, and Head of Flight Operations. The COO, Tanya Richards, approached the triplets with respectful professionalism. "Mr. Washington, and Mr. Washington," she acknowledged, causing several passengers to gasp as confirmation of the brothers' identities spread throughout the cabin. "Everything is arranged as requested." Malcolm nodded appreciation. "Thank you, Tanya. Please ensure medical personnel attend to Mr. Fitzgerald immediately." Paramedics boarded promptly, attending to Harold with efficiency while Clara Fitzgerald grasped Marcus's hand gratefully. "We'll be making arrangements for your complete medical care," he assured her. "Please don't concern yourself with any expenses." The HR director approached with tablet in hand. "We have preliminary statements from 27 passengers already, sir." They began emailing our customer service address during the flight. The Washington Air executives formed a professional barrier between the triplets and the increasingly anxious flight crew, creating space for an orderly passenger deplaning process. Many travelers paused to express support or share additional observations before exiting. When the last passenger had departed, many lingering in the jet bridge, reluctant to miss the unfolding drama, the real confrontation began. The triplets stood side by side facing the assembled crew, their identical appearances creating an imposing presence. "For those who may still be uncertain," Malcolm began, his voice carrying measured authority, "I am Malcolm Washington. These are my brothers, Marcus and Malik. Together, we are the majority shareholders and chief executives of Washington Innovations and, as of 8 weeks ago, Washington Air." The impact of this formal introduction was immediate. Several crew members who had maintained professional standards throughout the flight appeared relieved rather than concerned. Others, particularly Kenneth, Heather, and Captain Schneider, displayed varying expressions of dismay. Bradley attempted damage control first. "Mr. Washington, I want to personally apologize for any misunderstanding during today's flight. Had we been properly informed of your travel?" "That's precisely the problem," Marcus interrupted, his typically diplomatic tone hardened by experience. "Service excellence shouldn't depend on a passenger's identity or status." Captain Schneider stepped forward. "With all due respect, sir, I believe this situation has been greatly exaggerated. Minor service irregularities sometimes occur on any airline." Tanya Richards tapped her tablet screen, projecting a video onto the bulkhead screen, footage from multiple passenger angles showing the meal service discrimination, the medical emergency obstruction, and the subsequent conspiracy to falsify reports. "These do not appear to be minor irregularities, Captain," she stated flatly. The HR director, Diana Patel, continued the systematic dismantling of excuses. "We've received 27 passenger statements during this flight alone. They corroborate a pattern consistent with previous complaints against specific crew members." She displayed a graph showing complaint statistics. "Mr. Reynolds has received 34 discrimination complaints in the past year. Ms. Barrett shows a similar pattern with 29. Captain Schneider has 17 complaints regarding selective enforcement of protocols." Kenneth's attempt at righteous indignation collapsed against this evidence. Those complaints were dismissed by previous management. "Yes," Malik confirmed. "That's precisely why we're here today. The culture of dismissing valid concerns ends now." As if on cue, Jessica stepped forward. "Mr. Washington, I'd like to provide testimony about ongoing discrimination I've witnessed as well as experienced personally." 2 other flight attendants joined her, offering similar statements. The division within the crew had fully materialized, those who upheld service standards versus those who perpetuated discriminatory practices. "This is outrageous," Heather protested. "They're just trying to curry favor with new management." Marcus turned toward her with uncharacteristic sternness. "Ms. Barrett, your attempt to deny first-class meals to first-class passengers based solely on their appearance was recorded by multiple witnesses. Your subsequent conspiracy to falsify reports was overheard and documented. Which specific aspect are you claiming is outrageous? When Kenneth attempted to interject with accusations about playing the race card, Malcolm's response silenced the entire cabin. My brothers and I have built a technology empire valued at $11 billion. We've transformed failing businesses across 17 industries. We hold 43 patents between us and employ over 20,000 people. We didn't achieve this by playing cards, Mr. Reynolds. We succeeded through excellence, integrity, and accountability, the very values missing from your performance today. The silence following this statement carried tremendous weight. The chief legal counsel stepped forward, addressing the entire crew. Today's flight was part of a comprehensive culture audit being conducted across all Washington Air operations. Similar assessments are occurring throughout our route network this week. The behaviors documented today reflect systemic issues we're committed to addressing. This revelation that multiple flights were being secretly evaluated sent visible shockwaves through the crew. Captain Schneider's confident posture deflated as he realized the extent of the audit in progress. All passengers have now disembarked, the VP of Customer Experience announced. Crew members Reynolds, Barrett, Wilson, and Captain Schneider will proceed to Conference Room A for further discussion. All other crew members will be interviewed individually by HR representatives. As the confrontation reached its conclusion, the head of flight operations delivered the final blow. All parties involved are suspended with pay pending full investigation. Your airline credentials are temporarily deactivated, and company tablets must remain on board. The clinical, methodical dismantling of the discriminatory culture had begun. As Heather, Kenneth, Bradley and Captain Schneider were escorted from the aircraft, the remaining crew members witnessed a powerful demonstration of the new ownership's commitment to transformation. Before exiting, Malcolm addressed these remaining staff members directly. Today represents both an ending and a beginning. Those who uphold our values of excellence, respect, and integrity will thrive in the renewed Washington Air. Those who cannot or will not adapt will find opportunities elsewhere. With this clear vision established, the triplets departed the aircraft, leaving behind a crew forever changed by the experience, and a corporate culture on the verge of dramatic transformation. By sundown, the incident had exploded across social media platforms. Passenger videos showing three identical executives confronting discriminatory flight attendants garnered millions of views within hours. Hashtags #Washington Triplets and #FirstClassWhileBlack trended nationally as the story spread from aviation forums to mainstream news outlets. The Washington brothers hadn't sought publicity, but the visual drama of the situation, coupled with passengers' eagerness to share their eyewitness accounts, created irresistible viral content. Major networks scrambled to secure interviews while industry analysts debated potential repercussions for Washington Air specifically and aviation practices generally. This isn't about one flight or 4 crew members, Marcus explained to his brothers during their crisis management meeting at Washington Air's San Francisco offices. This represents a cultural watershed moment for the entire industry. Market reaction proved swift and volatile. Washington Air stock dropped 8% during morning trading as investors reacted to negative publicity. However, by afternoon, as the full context emerged through passenger testimonials and preliminary corporate statements, the trend reversed. Competitors' stocks began falling instead as speculation grew about similar practices across the industry. The Washington PR team released a measured initial statement. Washington Air is conducting a comprehensive investigation into service disparities reported on recent flights. We are committed to creating an inclusive travel experience for all passengers regardless of background. Further details will be provided following a thorough review of all evidence. This restraint contrasted sharply with Kenneth Reynolds' approach. The suspended purser had immediately contacted tabloid news outlets, claiming victimhood and racial reverse discrimination. They targeted us because we're white, he alleged to a controversial late-night host. They set us up to further their political agenda. These accusations might have gained traction if not for the overwhelming passenger evidence contradicting his claims. Harold Fitzgerald, now recovering in a San Francisco hospital, gave an emotional interview crediting Malik Washington with saving his life despite crew obstruction. "That young man wasn't allowed to help me because of how they perceived him," the retired judge stated firmly. "After 50 years in the legal system, I recognize discrimination when I see it. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was bias that nearly cost my life." Behind closed doors, the Washington brothers implemented their crisis management protocol with characteristic precision. While their legal and HR teams conducted formal investigations, they personally reviewed all evidence and strategized appropriate responses. "The recordings confirm everything," Malcolm noted, reviewing transcripts of Kenneth's attempt to fabricate reports. "Their defense is collapsing under its own weight." By day 3, the story had transcended simple airline service issues to spark broader conversations about discrimination in customer service across industries. Aviation experts revealed similar patterns throughout the sector, with minority passengers routinely receiving inferior treatment despite paying identical fares. Jessica Thompson's decision to become an unofficial spokesperson for supportive crew members added powerful insider perspective. "This wasn't an isolated incident," she confirmed during a morning show interview. "Many of us have witnessed differential treatment based on perceived passenger backgrounds. Those who spoke up previously were often silenced or penalized." Her testimony opened floodgates as former Legacy Airlines employees came forward with similar accounts. Their stories revealed a troubling pattern predating the Washington acquisition: minority passengers assigned worse seats despite availability, more frequent baggage checks, less attentive service, and stricter enforcement of policies that were routinely waived for white travelers. A former Legacy Airlines executive anonymously confirmed that complaints about such practices had been systematically buried. The previous management had an unwritten policy to dismiss discrimination claims without investigation, he revealed. They considered it cheaper to ignore the problem than address it. 1 week after the incident, Washington Air stock had not only recovered but surged 12% above pre-incident levels. Market analysts attributed this growth to public confidence in the Triplet's leadership and anticipation of positive cultural changes that might give the airline competitive advantage. Consumers increasingly factor corporate values into purchasing decisions, noted financial analyst Priya Sharma during a business news segment. The Washington brothers' transparent handling of this situation is resonating with travelers seeking ethical transportation options. Not all reactions proved positive. Certain political commentators attempted to frame the incident as reverse discrimination against white employees. These narratives gained limited traction, however, as passenger videos clearly documented the original discriminatory behavior. Corporate America's response reflected careful calculation. Some competitor airlines immediately announced diversity initiatives and service equality guarantees, attempting to distance themselves from similar practices. Others remained conspicuously silent, likely conducting internal audits of their own service patterns. Civil rights organizations requested meetings with the Triplets to discuss industry-wide reforms. The National Association for Advancement of Colored People and American Civil Liberties Union both offered resources for developing anti-discrimination training protocols that might become industry standards. Through this media maelstrom, the Washington brothers maintained characteristic composure and strategic focus. They declined most interview requests, authorized only factual statements supported by evidence, and kept attention centered on systemic improvement rather than individual punishment. "This isn't about public relations," Malik reminded their executive team during strategy sessions. "It's about meaningful transformation that affects real passengers' experiences. The headlines will fade, but the changes must endure." 2 weeks after the incident, they called a formal press conference at Washington Air headquarters to announce their comprehensive response. The timing was deliberate, allowing sufficient investigation while demonstrating appropriate urgency. Standing together at the podium, their identical appearances creating a powerful visual statement, the Triplets presented evidence-based findings and action plans rather than emotional appeals. They detailed systematic service disparities discovered during their company-wide audit and introduced comprehensive reforms designed to address root causes rather than symptoms. "Today marks a new beginning for Washington Air," Malcolm announced to assembled journalists. "We're implementing industry-leading anti-bias protocols, transparent complaint investigation procedures, and performance metrics that measure service equality alongside traditional efficiency standards. The press conference concluded with the announcement that Jessica Thompson would lead a newly created passenger experience department tasked with ensuring service consistency regardless of passenger background. This promotion, along with similar advancement opportunities for crew members who had demonstrated integrity, sent a clear message throughout the organization about leadership's values and priorities. As media coverage gradually transitioned from scandal to reform story, the Washington triplets had effectively transformed a potential crisis into a defining corporate moment. The incident that began with a denied meal had catalyzed industry-wide examination of practices long overdue for correction. Precisely 30 days after the incident, Washington Air headquarters buzzed with activity as employees gathered for a special company-wide broadcast. The triplets had called an all-hands meeting across every location, from corporate offices to maintenance facilities to airport lounges, ensuring every team member received the same message simultaneously. The formal announcement surprised no one yet impacted everyone. Kenneth Reynolds, Heather Barrett, Bradley Wilson, and Captain Thomas Schneider had been permanently terminated following exhaustive investigation and due process review. Evidence confirmed deliberate discriminatory treatment, attempted falsification of reports, and conspiracy to retaliate against passengers exercising their consumer rights, the official statement declared. These actions violated both company policy and federal aviation regulations regarding equal treatment of passengers. While the terminations dominated headlines, the more substantial organizational changes received less public attention despite greater long-term significance. The triplets had used the incident as catalyst for comprehensive restructuring designed to prevent similar situations across their entire operation. Jessica Thompson's promotion to Senior Director of Passenger Experience came with substantial resources and authority. Her department would implement mystery passenger programs, equality audits, and direct executive reporting channels that bypass traditional management hierarchies. "I never imagined opportunity arising from such a difficult situation," Jessica remarked during her introductory leadership meeting. But transformation often requires disruption of comfortable patterns. Her first initiative established anonymous reporting systems for both passengers and employees to document discrimination without fear of retaliation. These reports would trigger automatic investigations rather than discretionary reviews, closing the accountability loophole that had allowed previous issues to remain unaddressed. Industry response proved equally significant. Within 60 days, 3 major competitor airlines had implemented similar oversight systems and anti-bias training programs. The incident had created market pressure forcing industry-wide examination of long-standing practices previously considered untouchable. Perhaps most telling was the sudden influx of job applications from minority aviation professionals currently employed by competitors. Talented flight attendants, pilots, mechanics and administrators who had faced advancement barriers elsewhere now viewed Washington Air as a potential meritocracy. "We've received over 2,000 applications from experienced aviation professionals in the past month alone," Diana Patel reported during the executive committee meeting. "Many specifically cite our handling of the discrimination incident as their motivation for applying." Meanwhile, the terminated employees pursued predictable but ultimately unsuccessful legal challenges. Kenneth and Heather filed wrongful termination lawsuits alleging reverse discrimination and set-up scenarios. These cases collapsed during discovery phase when their own recorded statements planning report falsification were entered into evidence. Captain Schneider attempted a different approach, claiming he'd been unaware of cabin discrimination from the cockpit. This defense disintegrated when flight recorder transcripts revealed Bradley had explicitly informed him of the situation, with Schneider responding, "Handle it quietly. I don't want to be involved in any diversity drama." The Washington legal team hadn't pursued punitive damages against these individuals, focusing instead on systemic correction rather than personal retribution. This measured approach earned respect even from industry skeptics who had initially questioned their motives. Harold Fitzgerald's medical recovery progressed well under specialized care arranged and funded by the Washington brothers. Though no publicity was sought regarding these arrangements, Clara Fitzgerald's grateful social media posts created additional positive coverage. "These young men didn't just save my husband's life," she wrote in a widely shared update. They demonstrated what leadership actually means, taking responsibility even when problems weren't personally created by them. The elderly couple's invitation to tour Washington Air's operations center resulted in unexpected advisory roles, with Harold's judicial experience and Clara's background in education contributing valuable perspective to the company's anti-bias training program development. One particularly meaningful resolution came through private settlement offers to passengers who had previously filed discrimination complaints under Legacy Airlines management. These cases had been systematically dismissed without investigation, leaving affected travelers without recourse. While we cannot undo past experiences, Marcus explained in confidential settlement letters, we can acknowledge harm, offer appropriate compensation, and commit to systemic improvement ensuring no passenger faces similar treatment again. Many recipients expressed amazement at receiving acknowledgement for incidents they'd assumed would remain forever ignored. Their responses often mentioned validation's importance alongside financial compensation, the simple recognition that their experiences were believed and taken seriously. 90 days after the incident, the newly transformed Washington Air introduced updated uniforms, aircraft interiors, and service protocols simultaneously across their entire fleet. These changes symbolize deeper cultural transformation while providing practical improvements to passenger experience regardless of cabin class or personal background. The most profound resolution, however, remained largely invisible to casual observers, the internal cultural shift throughout the organization. Employees previously afraid to report discriminatory practices now felt empowered to address concerns directly. Managers previously rewarded solely for efficiency metrics now received evaluation based additionally on service equality measures. Kenneth's lawsuit collapse marked the final public chapter of the incident. The judge's dismissal with prejudice included a remarkable statement, plaintiffs' claims of discrimination are thoroughly contradicted by their own documented behavior and statements. The evidence establishes clear patterns of discriminatory conduct precisely matching the termination justifications provided. This legal victory closed the formal case while opening new possibilities for industry-wide standards. Aviation regulatory agencies began examining Washington Air's reformed practices as potential models for broader implementation, with preliminary discussions about incorporating similar accountability measures into certification requirements. As media attention finally faded, the Washington brothers conducted a private assessment of organizational progress. Their tradition of honest internal evaluation, the same approach that had identified problems during their incognito flight, now measured genuine improvement throughout their airline operations. The transformation remains incomplete, Malcolm acknowledged during their quarterly review. Cultural change requires sustained commitment beyond initial corrections. Nevertheless, Marcus added, measurable progress has exceeded statistical projections for this timeline. Malik nodded agreement while highlighting their next challenge. Now we must institutionalize these changes to ensure they outlast any individual leadership tenure, including our own. This commitment to sustainable improvement rather than temporary reputation management distinguished their approach from typical corporate crisis responses. The incident that began with denied meals had catalyzed genuine organizational transformation affecting thousands of employees and millions of future passengers. 6 months after the incident that transformed Washington Air, industry publications released their annual customer satisfaction rankings with unprecedented results. Washington Air had secured the top position across all major categories: overall service quality, complaint resolution, employee satisfaction, and most notably, equality of passenger experience regardless of background. This remarkable turnaround from Legacy Airlines' previous bottom quartile performance confirmed what the Washington brothers had long believed: ethical treatment and business success could reinforce rather than contradict each other when properly aligned. At the company's semi-annual gathering, employees from across the organization assembled in the hangar of their Chicago maintenance facility. The massive space had been transformed for the occasion, with the company's newest aircraft, bearing refreshed liveries symbolizing their cultural rebirth, providing a dramatic backdrop for the proceedings. Jessica Thompson, now confidently established in her executive role, took the stage first. Her journey from concerned flight attendant to respected senior leadership embodied the meritocratic advancement opportunities now embedded throughout the company. 6 months ago, a routine flight revealed uncomfortable truths about our organization, she began. Today, I'm proud to report that Washington Air leads the industry in service consistency metrics across all passenger demographics. The detailed performance data she presented showed statistical elimination of service disparities previously correlated with passenger background characteristics. Complaint patterns now reflected random service variables rather than systemic bias, while resolution processes demonstrated consistent application regardless of complainant identity. Jessica's department had grown into the company's most innovative division, developing assessment methodologies subsequently adopted by competitors and regulatory agencies alike. Her personal transformation from hesitant whistleblower to confident executive inspired similar professional growth throughout the organization. When Malcolm Washington approached the podium following Jessica's presentation, spontaneous applause erupted throughout the hangar. The Triplet's leadership through the crisis had earned genuine respect rather than mere compliance from employees at all organizational levels. Transformation rarely follows comfortable paths, Malcolm began, his voice carrying naturally without artificial amplification. The incident that catalyzed our journey resulted from painful circumstances none would have voluntarily chosen. Yet the resulting changes have created opportunities previously thought impossible. He outlined statistical evidence demonstrating improvement across key performance indicators. Not merely diversity metrics but operational excellence measurements including on-time performance, maintenance reliability, and financial sustainability. Excellence thrives in environments where every contribution receives fair evaluation, he continued. By eliminating artificial barriers to advancement and recognition, we've unlocked innovative potential previously suppressed by discriminatory practices. Malcolm then introduced a surprise guest whose presence visibly affected many veteran employees. Bradley Wilson, the former co-pilot whose discriminatory actions had contributed to the original incident, had requested opportunity to address the gathering. The tension in the hangar was palpable as Bradley approached the microphone. His demeanor displayed none of the defensive arrogance witnessed during the confrontation 6 months earlier. "I come today not seeking reinstatement or forgiveness," he began, his voice steady despite obvious discomfort. "Rather, I wish to acknowledge the legitimate reasons for my termination and share how that consequence became transformative rather than merely punitive." Bradley described his initial angry denial followed by gradual recognition of behaviors he'd previously rationalized or ignored. His subsequent work with anti-bias organizations had transformed his understanding of systemic discrimination's impact on both recipients and perpetrators. "I lost a career I valued through behaviors I can no longer defend," he concluded. While that loss remains permanent, the awareness it generated has created possibility for positive contribution moving forward. This unexpected testimony created powerful counterpoint to another former employee's continued defiance. Heather Barrett had recently appeared on controversial media outlets portraying herself as victim of cancel culture, despite extensive evidence confirming her discriminatory actions. Her refusal to acknowledge responsibility contrasted sharply with Bradley's ownership of his behavior's consequences. Following these presentations, Marcus Washington introduced the company's newest initiative, a scholarship program for underprivileged youth interested in aviation careers. The program would provide comprehensive support beyond mere tuition assistance, addressing systemic barriers that have historically limited industry diversity. Transformation extends beyond correcting past injustices, Marcus explained. True change requires creating new pathways ensuring future generations encounter opportunities rather than obstacles. The scholarship announcement received standing ovation from assembled employees, many of whom had volunteered as program mentors despite no formal requirement to participate. This grassroots enthusiasm reflected cultural internalization of values previously existing only in corporate mission statements. As the formal presentation concluded, Malik Washington invited special guests to join the brothers on stage. Harold and Clara Fitzgerald, fully recovered and beaming with pride at their unexpected role in organizational transformation. Sometimes catalysts for change arrive through unexpected channels, Malik observed as the elderly couple received warm reception. Harold's medical emergency revealed character, both its absence in those who blocked assistance and its presence in those who persisted despite obstruction. The Fitzgeralds had become beloved unofficial ambassadors for Washington Air, their personal testimony carrying authenticity no marketing campaign could replicate. Their presence reminded everyone that behind statistics and policies stood real people whose experiences reflected organizational values in practice rather than mere theory. Following the ceremony, the triplets boarded their newest aircraft for demonstration flight with their parents, the hard-working couple who had raised them in modest South Chicago circumstances while instilling uncompromising values that shaped their approach to business and life. As the plane reached cruising altitude, first-class attendants served premium meals to all passengers without hesitation or differentiation. This routine service, unremarkable in its equality, represented the most profound transformation of all. Behaviors once requiring explicit intervention had become natural organizational practice. Full circle, their father observed quietly, accepting his meal with dignity born from lifetime experience navigating spaces where his belonging had been routinely questioned. From being denied service to owning the airline. The ownership matters less than the standards, their mother responded with characteristic wisdom. You've created opportunity for others to experience respect regardless of position or background. This observation captured the essence of their approach across all business ventures, recognition that leadership's ultimate purpose involved creating systems where ethical treatment became standard practice rather than exceptional occurrence. As the demonstration flight concluded its journey, the Washington brothers gathered in the aircraft's conference section to discuss their next industry intervention. Their analytical identification of discriminatory patterns had already targeted several sectors beyond aviation where similar transformation might prove necessary. The hospitality industry displays statistical service disparities requiring attention, Malcolm noted, reviewing data compiled by their research team. Several hotel chains demonstrate concerning patterns similar to Legacy Airlines' previous practices. Transportation services beyond aviation show similar issues, Marcus added. Particularly luxury ground transportation and cruise operations. Malik nodded agreement. The methodology we've developed transfers effectively across service sectors. Incognito assessment followed by evidence-based intervention produces measurable improvement regardless of specific industry. Their conversation reflected established pattern, identifying problematic business practices others accepted as unchangeable, developing systematic approach to correction, implementing solution proving ethical improvement and business success could coexist profitably. As the aircraft began descent toward their destination, the triplets observed the cabin crew's professional service delivered with natural consistency to diverse passengers throughout the flight. This routine excellence, remarkable only in its unremarkability, represented their ultimate achievement, transformation so complete it had become simply standard operating procedure. The Washington Triplet story exemplifies several powerful lessons about confronting discrimination. First, documentation is crucial. By meticulously recording every interaction, they created irrefutable evidence that countered attempts to rewrite the narrative. Second, addressing discrimination requires systemic change, not just individual consequences. The brothers recognized that firing problematic employees wouldn't solve the underlying cultural issues. Their approach also demonstrates the importance of professionalism when facing bias. By maintaining composure despite provocation, they prevented their legitimate complaints from being dismissed as emotional overreactions. Additionally, their story highlights how discrimination can escalate from seemingly minor incidents, denied meals, to potentially life-threatening situations, blocking medical assistance. Perhaps most importantly, the triplets understood that true leadership means creating environments where ethical treatment becomes standard practice rather than exceptional occurrence. They transformed their negative experience into positive change that benefited countless others who lacked their power and resources. The ultimate success came not from punishing individuals but from building systems where discrimination became organizationally impossible, showing that ethical business practices and financial success can powerfully reinforce each other. Have you ever witnessed discrimination in public spaces like this? Would you have handled it differently than the Washington triplets? Share your experiences in the comments below. If you've faced similar situations, know that your story matters too. Don't forget to like this video if you found it inspiring, subscribe for more powerful stories of justice and transformation, and share with someone who might need to see that positive change is possible. Thank you for watching, and remember, standing against discrimination isn't just about individual moments of courage, but about creating lasting change that protects everyone's dignity.